This is Barry Zalma on insurance. I'm an attorney who is retired from the practice of law and now spend my time as an insurance claims consultant and expert witness, author, and producer of these videos. One thing people who sue insurance companies sometimes forget is that it must first prove the existence and the terms of the insurance policy on which the claim and suit are based. The party seeking coverage bears the burden of proving the existence of the policy as well as its material terms. An insurer in an action on a life policy for disability benefits had the burden to plead and prove the policy provision which made giving notice and furnishing proof of disability a condition precedent to recovery. This was Prudential Insurance versus Dinsmore, a 1934 case out of Kentucky. Both parties start from the proposition that the insured has the burden to prove coverage, while the insurer has the burden to prove an exclusion from coverage. For example, in State v. Renforth, a 1987 decision from the Arizona Supreme Court, the court found that the burdens of proof correlate positively with the significance of the interest at stake. The clear and convincing burden imposed on fraud claims similarly stems from the societal importance of an untarnished reputation. In a non-fraud civil case, however, an erroneous verdict for either party is no less unjust for one party than it would be if it were rendered for the opposing party. Civil claims generally need to be established only by a preponderance of the evidence. When an insured failed to provide sufficient information on which a reasonable jury could find the terms of the policy by a preponderance of the evidence, and therefore the court refused the claim. Now, sometimes, because some occurrence policies go back to the date of injury rather than the date when the claim is made, insurance claims are made on very old policies that have been lost or destroyed. Insurance claims often arise long after the expiration of a policy that may still be required to provide defense and indemnity to the insured. The proof of such policies has created a new and unique profession called insurance archaeology. If damage first occurred many years after expiration or cancellation of a policy and the policy is lost or destroyed, the insured can still prove its existence and its contents through an unsigned copy or by oral evidence. For example, in Chatham v. Occidental Life, a 1963 decision of the Mississippi Supreme Court, the court quoted with approval the general, well-established rule that a policy of insurance may be canceled any time before loss by agreement between the parties, and that such cancellation may be by consent of the parties, express or implied, from the circumstances independently of the terms of the policy. And when the insurance contract was effectively canceled by agreement of the parties voluntarily and knowingly done when the lost policy cancellation release was signed and executed. In Fulton, Boiler Works versus American Motorists, the Northern District of New York, found that the clear and convincing standard seemed appropriate to establish a lost policy, but declined to explicitly adopt a position on the issue at summary judgment. The issue of which standard applies is immaterial in that case because the plaintiff could not meet either standard. Other courts have done roughly the same. According to most state courts that have ruled on the issue, policyholders liable for environmental damage are entitled to insurance coverage not only under the policy that was in effect at the time the damage was first discovered, but also under every policy in effect during the often decades-long period when damage was silently or unknowingly occurring. Thus, if environmental damage occurred over a long period of time, a municipality or any other party deemed liable for the pollution may be entitled to coverage for both defense and indemnity under multiple, even scores of insurance policies. So when the putative insured failed to establish the terms and conditions of the lost policy by even a preponderance of the evidence, it failed to establish coverage. In Servants of Paraclete versus Great American, a 1994 decision out of the District of New Mexico, the court found a letter from the insurer acknowledging issuance of a policy, testimony of the insurer's business analyst about the type of policy issued to the plaintiff, testimony by an underwriter about the usual form of liability policies used at the time the lost policy was issued, written evidence of the exact premium paid, and at least two of the insurer's specimen policies considered together were sufficient to defeat the insurer's motion for summary judgment. See also Dart versus Commercial Union, a 2000 decision of the California Court of Appeal. Proof by secondary evidence is appropriate unless the policy was destroyed in bad faith. In a case heard by the Supreme Court of Ohio, Northeast Insurance Company refused to defend the city of Sharonville for the period of September 1980 through September 1981 because Sharonville had not been able to locate its policy for that time. The parties stipulated that a policy existed for the year before. Affidavits from Sharonville supported that coverage was in effect for the year at issue, and documents were provided for a prior unrelated suit during the disputed coverage term. The court, with that evidence, concluded, quote, "The appellate court accurately determined that Sharonville presented sufficient evidence to establish the relevant contents of the missing insurance policy on an application for liability coverage filed by the Sharonville Police Department sometime in 1981. James Darlin, the Sharonville Safety and Service Director, stated that the city's present insurer was Northeast and listed the policy with its disputed number as expiring on September 16, 1981. Darlin's May 5, 2003 affidavit stated in filling out that application, he got his information from the city's insurance files that to the best of his recollection, the city was insured by Northeast from September of 1980 through September of 1981, and that the city was continuously insured by Northeast with law enforcement liability insurance from September of 1979 until 1981, close quote. The court recognized that one seeking to recover on an insurance policy generally has the burden of proving a loss or demonstrating coverage under a policy. Since there was no evidence of bad faith, the court concluded there was enough to hold the insurer to the lost policy. Occurrence-based insurance policies live as long as the liabilities that were triggered during the policy period and can provide policyholders with coverage for litigation. In fact, old occurrence policies can be more valuable than current policies because they have fewer exclusions and sometimes contain no aggregate limits. Organizations with significant exposure to long-tail liabilities, including asbestos, environmental, or product liability claims, are likely to need insurance archaeology even if they're not faced with a claim, because sometime in the future they will be. Insurance archaeology is a term that has come to denote not only recovery efforts for specific lost policies, but also broad-based projects to reconstruct and organize historic insurance portfolios. And the need for insurance archaeologists tells every person in business that it is best not to throw away any insurance policy you have and to keep them throughout the term and existence of your business, and probably even store them after the business dies a natural death. Many organizations have found that managing insurance assets requires constant updating and maintenance. The policyholder that has quick access to its entire insurance portfolio is prepared for the predictable, unpredictable challenges of the 21st century, and with modern computer storage and storage in the cloud, the storage of old insurance policies should be easy, cheap, and thorough. Whether the challenge is notifying dozens of insurers who insured the insured over several decades of toxic tort litigation or environmental actions, dealing with competing claims for the same policy limits from former subsidiaries, or enhancing sale value in a merger or real estate transaction, the return on investment from continually updating a historic insurance audit is useful and can be essential to an entity that has existed for a long time or merged with long-lived businesses. Millions of dollars worth of coverage will be preserved and at the ready in the event of a claim or loss. The standard of proof required to establish the material terms and limits of a loss policy is also usually found to be a preponderance of the evidence. Where a court found admittedly thin evidence sufficient to establish purchase of umbrella coverage and addition of subsequently purchased properties as acquired, insureds still have the burden of proof on the existence and terms of the loss policy. If insureds present evidence of policy limits, the insurer then has the burden of proving a different policy limit or exclusions to coverage applies. The level of proof required to prove the existence of a loss policy, however, is often in dispute. The existence, execution, delivery, and contents of the loss policy must be proved in some states by clear and convincing evidence, although this standard was rejected by the New York County Supreme Court in Goldfields versus Aetna. Rejecting the analysis of Boyce versus Insurance Company of North America, that court adopted a preponderance of the evidence standard in loss policy cases. That standard has been adopted by at least one federal court in New York. If the policyholder can prove the existence of the policy for the period in question, the burden of proving the limits and the terms and conditions of the policy is then turned over to and becomes the obligation of the insurer. This video was adapted from my book, Zalma on Insurance Claims, Part 108, Second Edition, which is available as both a Kindle book and as a paperback from Amazon.com. If you found this video to be of use, please forward it to your colleagues, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, my Rumble channel, and my blog so that you can be advised of future blog posts and future videos. Thank you for your attention.